Okay, another interesting fact, example of invisible structure that I want to talk about is income taxes. Income tax as a law was never ratified by all the states. So it really isn't a legal thing. It just happens to cover all the interest banks need to pay the Federal Reserve Bank. So it's really inequality there. And you don't legally then have to pay income tax, but try telling that to your employer. This is kind of edgy stuff. I'm not recommending it. I work for a state institution. I could not keep my job if I just said I'm not paying income tax. It's very built into our system, but technically it is not. It is not law. If you ask the IRS about that, they will give you some deflective answers, and most people don't even know. But I do know a few people that have not paid income taxes for many years. People like at Coil Springs that don't have like an institution that they're working for that is more obligated. And Warren Brush at Coil Springs has said that people he knows that don't pay income taxes, if the IRS asks you about this, you can push back and tell them that there's nowhere is it stated in our federal codes that it's a law, and they will back down after a while. I think if you're a big money maker, you'd have a harder fight, but it's just an interesting notion. Another historical point is some would say that we used to have slavery in the United States, big blemish on our history. And now some would say that slavery has moved into the banking system. So I'm not trying to any way minimize what happened to actual humans in the slave system. But in a metaphoric way, we're all now working for these privately owned banking companies to make them richer. And that is a way we all are. We have not chosen to work for them. We just do it, and it's an invisible structure and thing that's put on us. Andrew Jackson, the president, what piece of paper money is he on? Well, hopefully you still see a lot of those. Since the ATMs became a thing, we see a lot of Andrew Jacksons on the $20 bill. He pushed during his his presidency, he pushed for a decentralized banking system. Guess what happened to him? He was assassinated. Abraham Lincoln started greenbacks. They were a local monetary system that he thought would also be really helpful for building grassroots strength in communities. Guess what happened to him? He was assassinated. Now, I'm speaking like Michael Moore. These things might not have been completely correlated with that, but it definitely bred a lot of disfavor towards those presidents by the wealthy. And I always think ecologically. I mean, when you have a few elements in a system that have more than their fair share of energy, biomass, resources with humans, it's money and social power, they are very unstable. They'll topple too much in one place. That's not how ecosystems work. I mean, you see some of that in ecosystems over a long period of time, like a large redwood tree gathering more and more resources. It's much bigger than most of the other organisms, and it lasts a lot longer. But it also contributes a lot to the ecosystem too, and it will at some point topple and disintegrate, and all those resources will go back into the ecosystem into a more fluid state. So as humans gather more and more power, certain families or people, power and money, they usually have to do a lot more to maintain that. So they're going to do more extreme measures to try to keep that in place. They don't want to lose that. That is a big difference when you look at human systems and non-human systems. Humans are one of the few kind of organisms on Earth that really tries to hoard resources and prevent others from getting that. In a natural ecosystem without humans in it, or a lot of indigenous cultures, especially in the past, you see that resources are shared between organisms, and it's an open metabolic cycle between different organisms in the atmosphere and humans, and there's not as much hoarding and locking up of resources. So there's a lot of fear based into the system. Interesting things too. Early on, when checks became a thing, if you write, even now, some of you may still write checks, but maybe not. But if you look at the line where you sign your name, it's actually not a line. It's a bunch of little words, little letters. I think now usually the checks it says authorized signature in teeny letters that makes it look like a line. It used to be a little clause, a phrase of words that said you agree to the banking system from which this money is being drawn, the banking system that's going to take some of that to put into profit for these private companies and private families that own the Federal Reserve Bank. So it was it was your authorization and agreement to go along with this. Another interesting tip or fact is the zip code that we use in mailing things, our addresses, that was created by a private company, and whenever you use a zip code, that company still gets money because it was sold to the United States government as a way to more easily distribute mail. Stamps too, some of that goes to private companies. Lots of things like that we don't know about with our monetary system that seem like they're kind of for the good of the people, and they must be just all about lowest prices and just about covering costs, but a lot of them are privately owned. So we may want to know about those things to know if we want to choose to use them still and support this inequality that's happening in a monetary system. So next, I'm going to talk about some alternative banking systems that don't have to do with the Federal Reserve Bank, and I'll bring that up on the next video.